everyone. I'm Tamara Banks. Welcome to Dialogue Denver DA. Mitch, great to see you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Tamara. Great to see you.
And we have a really interesting guest here today. Larry Stevenson, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tamara. Thank you for having me. Mitch, thank you.
Tell us a little bit about the transportation on patrol. How did this all come about?
Well, it originally started as taxis on patrol.
Right.
We looked at in the taxi industry, we looked at how could we give back to the community? What could we do with this asset that we have of over 1,200 taxi drivers at any one time on the streets of Denver? And with my experience of being a former police officer and being in the taxi industry at the time, it kind of just was two lifetime things of mine that kind of molded themselves together. Mm-hmm. And so we just put taxis on patrol to the test. And by God, it's gone all over the globe since we started January 21st of 2011.
Wow. So they're kind of like a mobile neighborhood watch, just keeping their eyes and their ears open for trouble.
Yeah, we modeled the program after the National See Something and Say Something program. Mm-hmm. All we're asking taxi drivers to do, or taxi drivers at the time, was that if they saw something in our collective communities while they're behind the wheel of their taxi car, to simply see something, call something in. If they needed to call 911, if it demanded emergency personnel response, call 911. If it was a lower lying crime or incident, then call the non-emergency number. But we needed people to pay attention to what was going on in our communities. And so we started out using taxi drivers, a mobile neighborhood watch on wheels.
So you have a little bit of experience with crime prevention and safety. Tell us about your background.
Well, my background first in title is, of course, I'm a former Denver police officer, but my foreground, whenever people ask me about my background and my title, I got to tell them my foreground first. I am Paige and Kayla's proud father and Tracy's happy husband, Donovan and Anthony's role model. And that's my family, and that's what makes me and what drives me. But being a former Denver police officer, growing up in Park Hill, in Denver, being a community activist, being a minister, an author, motivational speaker, somebody that is just hell-bent on helping our communities be a safer place to live, work, and play. That's me in a nutshell.
Mitch, how does this help your department in terms of having these extra sets of eyes and ears out in the community to help solve crimes or prevent crimes, maybe?
Well, you know, Tamara, sometimes the simplest ideas are the best, and this is just that. When I started in the DA's office, we used to actually have a lot of crimes against taxi drivers. We'd have those cab drivers that would get murdered by people, and they were always out there and kind of at risk. And so the idea that one, they'd get the kind of training that Larry's providing them on when they should and when they shouldn't, but when they should report, has helped. But the other thing is to use the new technology and get cameras in these cars. And by having cameras in the cars, it's safer for the drivers, and it's also recording the kinds of things they're seeing that will help us solve those cases. So many of the crimes that we see are robberies of cab drivers, hit and run accidents, pedestrians getting hit by cars, those kinds of things. And sometimes if there's a cab driver there that makes that call, you're going to save somebody's life, and you're going to make the community safer. And so this really is, that 911 call may save that pedestrian, may save that person that got hit by the hit and run driver. It may save their lives. So the idea that the community is out there, you know, when we talk about Crime Stoppers, when we talk about Community Watch, this idea of putting on wheels, having the technology to back it up with the training that these cab drivers need and these transport individuals need, when they should act, when they need to act, if it's a 911, that's extremely important. Reporting the crime, recording the crime, and helping us prove who did these things.
Can you use that video or stills from the camera in court, and do the cab drivers ever have to testify?
They may have to testify, and they're more than willing to do that in the cases that we've had. But yeah, obviously we can use it in court. You know, the thing about the new technology these days is you're on tape in your normal day about 25 times a day or more. ATM, grocery store, where you're going, you're going to be on surveillance tape. The police have cameras around the city. So you're going to be on those. And when we have a crime like this occur, the first thing they do, if they don't have a suspect, is where do we have cameras? You know, was there a cab driver there? You know, that's the kind of thing that the police are now doing in a major investigation. And all of those things are admissible in court.
Larry, was it hard to get traction behind this idea?
It was thought that it was going to be hard to get traction. We were asked and told if we could get just 25% or 50 cab drivers to be involved the year that we started, again, January 21st to the day, January 21st of 2011, if we could just get 50 guys involved that would call in about 50 to 100 calls, then we would consider this program a success. But the first year, from January to December, we got over 1,537 calls called in by over 88% of drivers out of the 1,200 that we had trained. So when the question is asked, was it hard to get people involved? Because of the questions that's asked during training, it was very easy. But it was thought that it would be hard because of community, because of culture, because of people that don't really get along with or want to interact with law enforcement. But when you ask people a specific question and you touch their heart during training, the question that's asked is, this is a volunteer program. You don't have to get involved, but let me ask you, what if it were you? What if it were your loved one? What if it were your child? What if it was someone that you cared about? What would you do then? Would you call 911 then? And then we follow that up with a very powerful statement, and that is, let me tell you, it's always somebody's loved one. It's always somebody's child. It's always somebody that someone cares about. So I have to treat my family or your family just like I treat mine, your community just like I treat mine. And so it was very easy to get people involved after asking them that question.
Talk a little bit more about the training. How long is it, and what do they have to go through?
The training takes us about 2.5 hours to get through the initial training. It's a two-step process, but the initial see something and say something training takes about 2.5 hours. It was developed by myself and Commander Tony Lopez from the Denver Police Department, endorsed by, at the time, Chief Whitman and several other law enforcement officers in the Denver Police Department. But we harp on giving a proper description, because that is what drives this program. If you're a good witness and give a proper description from head to toe, systematically, can you describe someone? And what is that description that we're giving? So part of it is, say if you're describing someone, they have on hat, they have on glasses, they have on hoodie or whatever, we're not concerned with the clothing. We want to talk about those things that cannot change in the heat of the moment. So to give a proper description that law enforcement can actually use, for example, if you were to look at me and describe me, you would describe me as a black male, 6'3", approximately 200 plus pounds. And you know what? Calling me black is not profiling me. You're calling me what I am. And we're describing a person of how they are. And those are the types of things. It's not about profiling. It's about giving the police a proper description to lead them to a suspect.
What kinds of calls have you gotten in the first year or so?
Well, our inaugural call, that's why I always give the date. January 21st, 2011 is when we started. Our inaugural call came in January 22nd of 2011, and that was a taxi driver that I had trained the day before who had witnessed the fatal hit and run of Jose Medina on 9th and Lincoln in front of the Rockstar Lounge. So our inaugural call was a very intense call, very intense moments of this taxi driver following at a safe distance while abiding by all traffic and criminal laws, this driver who had just hit and killed someone. So hit and run is an easy term, but we got to keep in mind, if that's a fatality, then they're willing to volunteer to follow a homicide suspect now. So our inaugural call was a fatal hit and run, but we've called in rapes, we've called in shootings, we've called in potential child abduction cases, easy things. They've called in debris on the highway. They've called in lights out on 13th and Broadway. They've called in possible flat flood warnings. The driver at the time was on the roof of his car, floating down the street. But we asked them to call in anything that may demand law enforcement or emergency personnel attention. What is not a transportation on patrol call is when somebody jumps and runs over a $5 ride. We don't want to mix and mingle that type of stuff. Or if Miss Jenkins' cat is in the tree yet again, you know, the cat climbed up, the cat will get down. We don't want to waste taxpayers' dollars, because we pride ourselves on saying that this costs taxpayers $0.00 for this program. So we've called in a wealth of calls, and they've led to some great things.
And I think it's important to underscore the fact that, in particularly the Jose Medina case, I covered that story, and it was just heartbreaking to see this young man killed, and then the people drove off. And had it not been for the cab driver, who in this case followed them, got the appropriate identification of the car, those folks would not be in this country. So that's got to be a real help on the prosecution side.
The woman who was the driver was actually on the tarmac on an airport in Texas, or out of state, on her way to Mexico. And the importance of that case is oftentimes we may get the driver. The critical thing in this program is the car. The car, we've got to be able to locate the car. And then the driver, because we can't prosecute someone else that's not the driver, with the exception of that case, where she had a number of people in her family that helped her and gave her advice. One person told her to flee, and then she got advice, and she used her sister's ID to get the ticket to get on the airplane and get out of Denver, and we prosecuted everybody that was involved in helping her. That's very rare, and I think it's because of what this cab driver did in this situation, that we were able to act immediately, we were able to locate the car, all the people involved, find out what they did and what their role was, and getting that woman out of Mexico would have been nearly impossible. But because of the quick action of the cab driver, the Denver Police Department, it all came together. And it came together then in a prosecution of at least 3 individuals that played a role in that tragic death.
And you talked about budgets. This doesn't cost a dime for the city and county of Denver, right?
Nope, $0.00.
So, Larry, talk a little bit about your program. It used to be patrol taxis, or taxi patrol, right?
Used to be taxis on patrol.
Taxis on patrol.
Up until January of 2013. Then it became transportation on patrol. Why? Because we're training a wealth of transportation providers. Now we're training truckers, we're training limousine drivers, pedal cab drivers, golf cart drivers, just a whole wealth. We just signed the contract for pizza delivery drivers. So everyone behind the wheel, we're attempting to put them on patrol, again, to be extra eyes and ears for the police, to help them keep our neighborhoods and streets safe, but so that our communities could be a safer place to live, work, and play.
And so it's probably important to note that you're not asking folks to take the law into their own hands.
Absolutely.
And approach someone. You're simply asking to gather detailed information so police officers can do their job.
Yes, and we would never ask someone to take the law into their own hands. Most powerful point of our presentation is that you have power in your voice and power in your pen. And all we want you to do is pick up the phone and call 911. And then do what the operator tells you to do, or the responding officer. And then once you do that, hang up and call your taxi dispatcher so they can, one, know that you're safe, but that you've just reported a transportation on patrol call. And the key word when they contact 911 is that I'm a transportation on patrol provider. And then 911, who also their operators have been trained, they know what to do with that call as well and how to track it for us.
Is there any other program in the country like this that you know of?
Well, this program, this program started here, of course, on 38th and Holly, right out District 2 is where we had the press conference. We started with the Denver Police Department and the 4 major taxi companies here, Yellow, Union, Freedom, and Metro. And it has since expanded to 30 different U.S. cities across the country. We work with over 250 law enforcement agencies across the country. We've also assisted in starting it in Surrey, England, in Okinawa, Japan, in Melbourne, Australia, and this year we will complete the training in Johannesburg, South Africa for transportation on patrol.
Wow, an international company.
We went viral.
How did you get connected with CEL, the counter educational Education Learning Lab.
Yeah, the Counterterrorism Education Learning Lab. I'm always looking for what's next. What else can we do? So we have the grassroots level of see something and say something. But with all the stuff going on nationally and internationally, and now here locally with some terrorism stuff, and I wanted to take it a little bit deeper and give transportation providers a deeper understanding of how to protect our blocks, our communities, our cities, therefore our country. So it was ironic that we signed the agreement with the cell the day of the Boston bombings. Literally, we were sitting in Larry Monzel's conference room with Melanie and the folks from the cell, and we had signed the contract, and we were sitting there when the bombings happened. But it was always the intent behind that was for them to be able to recognize one or all of the 8 signs of terrorism, and that's what they're taught when they go through this second phase of the training, is the 8 signs of terrorism. Whether people are impersonating police officers or emergency responders, people may be timing the response from employees, employers, or emergency responders, but those 8 signs of terrorism, again, not to profile anybody, we're concerned with the action or the activity of the person.
Is there ever any concern that these transportation experts might become targets themselves because they're kind of out there?
That has always come up. And we have yet to have a transportation provider become a target, but that always comes up. But again, we have to work off of that question. What if it were you? We cannot be scared of a title that we may get, that title of snitch. You know, that we go through that, we understand that people may look at transportation providers as snitching. We look at them as heroes, period.
Right,
You know,
right.
so.
And so, Mitch, again, we've talked about at least one case where there's been some prosecution evidence brought and arrests at the end of the day. Is that common? Is that something that's happened in this past couple of years now?
Oh yeah, it's been common, and what's important is that it's important for people to understand that if the driver makes the call and provides some information about what they saw, sometimes it's not the description, it's actually the activity they observe that then leads us to more evidence that helps us solve the case. We had a woman involved in a fight get in her car and run over the woman she was fighting. She ran over her with her car. She came out of the Burger King right there on 6th Avenue and Broadway. She made a turn right in front of a cab driver, cut him off, went down and ran the light there. That happens to be one of those lights where there's cameras.
Right.
And so he said, this is what she did, this is the car, this is the license number, and your cameras went off. And there we were, we went and pulled the camera, and there she was, sitting behind the wheel. And the picture from that camera was so good, there were 3 people in the car, you could identify the guy in the back seat. So when she went to claim that it was someone else driving the car, it was because of the information we got from the cab driver that made the difference in that case, and we were able to get a second-degree murder conviction in that case. So it's not only the descriptions, but also describing what they saw. Was it reckless driving? Did it look like the person was intoxicated when they were driving? You know, stopping a sexual assault by making the call. A lot of criminals are cowards. And if they know somebody's out there, they know a call's been made, they may not victimize that woman or that child. They may know that they're going to get caught and not run from the accident scene and make sure help is gotten for the pedestrian they've run over, that type of thing. So, you know, to have a community partner like this and to expand it, I've seen cases where newspaper delivery guys, they got the information. Obviously, pizza delivery men are out there all the time. These are folks that are on our streets anyway. They might as well be providing us information to help us keep our community safe.
And as you mentioned earlier, Larry, the other half of that conversation is the call receiver, the 911 operator who's receiving that call. So they also get training, right?
They also get the same training that the taxi drivers get, and then a little bit more in depth on how to track the call and how to get information back to us and connect the multiple jurisdictions that we deal with.
We talked about the Medina hit and run. Is there another example, success story that really strikes at your heart that you feel like, you know, this is really something that we need to continue to do?
You know, there are so many examples, but the Medina alert is really near and dear to our heart, and we push that because that was our inaugural call. That's what opened the door to get this program across the country, and if not the globe. DA Morrissey was very instrumental in helping us get the Medina alert started too here in Denver, so we're very thankful for that. But because of that, we have the Medina alert here in Denver, but we've expanded it now to the city of Aurora, in which we just had the launch was November. We have the city of Lakewood coming on board and Arapahoe County coming on board. But more importantly, we have Representative Kathleen Conti, who's introducing the Medina Alert bill during this legislative session to ensure that we could use the VMS signs on the highway. Hit somebody at 20 or 30 miles an hour, you could be 20 or 30 miles away by way of the highway. So it's very important that we get to use those VMS boards, flash Medina Alert, and give a good description on what law enforcement is looking for. So this bill going through will allow us to use it throughout the state of Colorado.
So,
Tamara,
go ahead.
you know, just to have it named after this young man who was killed in this horrible way, I mean, it's a tribute to him. I know it means a lot to his family. And, you know, Larry's made sure that that is the case. And I think that that is a tribute to him, and the fact that a Medina alert will come up on those highway signs, that fact that the 911 operators know this is something that's important. And again, it's like I said, this is simple. Some of the best ideas in the world are the simplest. And this is a simple idea of collaborating and getting those individuals out there to help us make our community safer. So I want to thank Larry for all the hard work he's done on this.
Thank you.
Larry, keep up the great work. As you said, simplest ideas are typically the best ones. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
It's great to have Larry Stevenson here being a guest today with Denver DA Mitch Morrissey on this edition of Dialogue Denver DA. I'm Tamara Banks. We'll see you next time.
Denver 8 TV, your city, your source.